Hey everybody, it's Randall Herrera, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about using the 35mm lens on the Canon 80D for portraits. So this is just my thoughts and opinions on using this focal length on a 80D for portrait sessions. Now, some of you guys may or may not know, the 80D is a crop sensor camera, so it is giving you a 1.6 crop. That means this 35mm lens gives you approximately 50 millimeters. It's actually a little bit over, as you would have to multiply 35 millimeters times 1.6, which would give you
35 times 0.6 equals,
which would give you approximately 56 millimeters. So it's close enough to a 50 millimeter length. So from here on, I'm just going to refer to it as 50 millimeters, if anything, right? So we do need to keep that in mind. Generally speaking, 35 millimeters on a full frame would be it's great for portraits, but more like the type of portraits where you want to include a lot of your environment, be it in a room or outside or whatever, but somewhere where you want to include, you don't really want to do headshots, for example, with a 35 millimeter on a full frame camera. But on a crop sensor camera, you can get away with getting in a little bit closer. It's still a nicer focal length if you're trying to get in a little bit more of the environment. Full body shots, it's great for that, or waist up kind of stuff. But again, if you're looking to kind of take in a little bit more of the background, it's a really good lens for that. It's a really good focal length on a crop sensor camera like the 80D for that type of portraits. Now, this particular lens I have here is Canon's 35mm F1.4 L lens, Mark II 1.4. It's a very sharp lens, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this one. Canon also has the 35mm f2, which has image stabilization. This one does not. Now, image stabilization can be very helpful during different circumstances. The 1.4 will give you a little bit more of the blurred out background if you're looking for that. If you're not into that, or at least not too much, you can definitely get away with the 35 f2. This is also about 3 times the price of the 35 f2, brand new. I believe it's $1,600. I bought it refurbished, so I got at a pretty good discount. It's the only reason why I bought it. The other option is Sigma. Sigma has they have a Sigma Art 35mm 1.4. It's somewhere around 900, give or take. I don't know. And it's supposed to be a very sharp lens. The only thing with the Sigmas is that sometimes you do have to do some manual focus adjustments in camera, or you can get the dock and use it with that. The other good 35mm option would be this lens, Sigma's 18 to 35. It's a zoom lens, the largest aperture zoom lens, I believe, for crop sensor cameras is a 1.8. So at 35, you can definitely get some nice bokeh, if you're close enough to your subject. And it is a zoom lens, so you can get it out to 18 if you want to do like some really nice dramatic environmental portraits with, let's say, sunset in the back, and you want to have a whole scene. This lens can really work out because you don't have to step as far back. This lens, to get full body, again, I don't know, I'm just off the top of my head, 10 feet or something like that, or maybe more, maybe 10, something like that, to get the entire body and some of the environment and that kind of thing. Anyways, I think the 35mm focal length on a crop sensor camera like the 80D is a nice balance. Again, you've heard, or if you haven't heard, a lot of people suggest 50mm as an everyday lens or for street photography because it gives you a nice kind of normal plane of view, like the way you see things in terms of distance. In terms of distance, and that's why it's often suggested. So this kind of gives you that. You don't have to step that far back. For example, if you were to do, if space is limited, right? If you're trying to do indoor portraits, for example, you can do a 50, which would give you a nice, like, kind of the very, your standard portrait focal length, which is 85 on full frame, so you would get, like, with 50, you could get something close to that. With this, you definitely need a lot more space. So that's why I kind of like the 35 on the crop sensor when space is limited, because sometimes if I was only going to take one lens, I would take the 35 on a crop sensor. Again, the keynote here is on a crop sensor. If I was only going to take one lens for a portrait session on a full frame, I would definitely take the 50. But we're talking about crop sensor cameras right now. It's a nice midway point where you don't have to get too far back, and you don't get any sort of weird perspective distortion. If you're getting in a little close, I wouldn't get super close with it, like tight headshot. I mean, you could if you're okay with the distortion, you might get. But in any case, I'm loving this lens. I'm loving this focal length on this Canon 80D. I just recently did a photo session in which I wasn't really shooting this camera for that particular photo session, but I did bring it with me just to kind of do a few test shots with it and see how it works. So I hadn't really actually used it for a portrait session as of that moment. I've been mostly using it for a little bit of street and some, like, cityscapes and that kind of thing. I actually originally bought it because I had gotten a 5D Mark IV, which I no longer have. I sold that, and I thought I was going to sell it, but I decided to hang on to it, and I'm really glad I did, because it works very well with this camera for portrait sessions. I'm really enjoying it. I'm sure I'm going to have it back out to really test it out. Anyways, I spent about 10-15 minutes with it during this photo session. I wasn't really there, to do this. I was there to do something else, but while I was there, I took it out, I put this lens on it, and I'm really enjoying what I saw. So I'm definitely recommending this lens for this camera. It's 35 millimeters. This is the F1.4. Like I said, it's a very super sharp lens, wide open at 1.4. It's great for low light. But the 35 f2 is also very good. Sigma's 35 1.4 is very good, and is also the cheaper alternative of manual lenses. I think Samyang or Rokinon has some manually focusing lenses. That's only, that's where you're kind of sacrificing a little for the cheaper price. But I'm definitely going to be shooting with it more. I'm really enjoying this focal length on this camera. Anyway, so that's it for this video. I'm going to put up some samples so you guys can see, and a little bit more video, and I'll see you guys next time. Just hold that there for a second.